These redwoods that you see now, their parents were around when the Roman Empire was around. That's how long they've been here.
But these days, these majestic trees, among the oldest in the world, are struggling.
They're being loved to death, basically. This park was set up in the 1950s ostensibly to protect these trees, but because it's on the edge of a very dense urban area, it gets a lot of use.
For the last decade, Rob and his team have been racing against the clock, restoring the forest's essential ground vegetation and adding rails to keep park visitors away from the tree's roots.
Once the trampling is reduced and people stay on the trail, the forest is naturally regenerative. It's a very resilient forest if you give it the chance to restore itself, if you will.
But that might not be enough. As temperatures increase due to climate change, coastal fog, essential to these trees' survival, has been eroding. Meanwhile, wildfires have become more frequent and more intense.
The Redwood Range is 450 miles.
Deborah Zierton works at Save the Redwoods League. She says these trees remove more carbon from the atmosphere per acre than any other forest on Earth. Because most redwoods are on private land, her organization has been buying up hundreds of acres of trees as a way to protect them. How quickly are we losing these redwoods?
Well, you know, we only have about 5% of the old growth redwood forests left. So much of those old ancient trees were cut down.
The good news, Rob says, with a little TLC, these redwoods could be here for centuries to come.
If it's managed properly and it's healthy and it's allowed to do what it does, it's an amazing solution or contribution to, climate change.
And while he's optimistic, he's keenly aware that these ancient trees are not out of the woods just yet.
On the peninsula, the city of Brisbane may be a small community, but as Max Darrow shows us, it's trying to make a big impact when it comes to reducing light pollution.
Barbara Ibel really appreciates the view from her back porch.
It is beautiful.
But once the sunlight fades and nighttime arrives, the longtime Brisbane resident says something is missing when she looks to the sky.
Oh yeah, it's all sky glow right now. We get 2-3 stars, I think, but every one of those stars is still there. They're just hidden.
So for the past several years, Ibel, her neighbors in the city, worked to create a plan to try and change that. They came up with a dark sky ordinance.
Light pollution has skyrocketed.
And after a January 18th city council vote, the city of Brisbane is implementing it, which means the clock starts for Brisbane residents to modify their outdoor lighting.
We put this one in a couple months ago. We used to have a very nice carriage light fixture, but it was completely open and glass on 4 sides, and the bulb was completely exposed.
It has a warmer color temperature, a motion sensor, and it's shielded.
And one of the things we look for is put a ruler across the bottom of the fixture. The light bulb should be higher than that so that the light bulb is completely tucked up inside the fixture. We have every bit as much usable light as we used to. It's just being directed downward.
This is an example here at City Hall of a fully shielded light, and it's got the warmer color temperature. It's pointed downwards.
Caroline Chung is with the city.
You can see the difference over the years that there has been an increase in outdoor lighting applied to people's homes.
Per the regulations, new outdoor light bulbs and fixtures must meet brightness, color, and other standards set by the Dark Sky Ordinance. Commercial property owners have 5 years to modify their outdoor lighting to meet the criteria. Residential property owners have 10 years, and the city has 15 years for streetlights and facilities. As for enforcement,
we have an administrative citation process. So there's definitely a warning, and we have a code enforcement officer that will work with the residential and commercial community.
Brisbane is a small city nestled in a hillside next door to San Francisco, one of the largest culprits of Bay Area light pollution. Even though they won't make a major dent in reducing regional light pollution,
there's always somebody out there who's making a bigger mess than you, right? And that's not any reason to not clean up your own house. And I'm hoping that other cities will follow suit, and that, in 10 years, we will have dark skies compliant Bay Area, and we will have our stars back, and our animals will have their nights back, and people will have a better quality of life.
Ibel still has work to do on the home front.
But this one's unshielded, so it casts light out and up where it's not needed, and that's considered light pollution.
And although she has 10 years to find a fix, you can bet she'll have it done much sooner than that.
Still ahead on this Earth Day special. We all have things around the house that just don't work, right? Well, instead of tossing it in the trash, take it to the Fix-It Clinic, the community effort to give new life to your old stuff.
Plus, it's a fashion trend that's flooding the market, and it's having an impact on the environment. We look at the cost of fast fashion. Californians throw about 40 million tons of trash into landfills each year. That includes a lot of gadgets, electronics, appliances, toys, and items that, well, no longer work. Ann Makovic shows us how an army of volunteers is showing you don't have to pitch it, you can fix it for free.
At the Redwood City Public Library, you can check out an amazing world of ideas, lifelong learning, and community. And we're not just talking about the books.
Bicycle fixed!
From a busted bike,
music box fixed!
A beloved ballerina music box.
Pamela's fan is fixed!
And an old cast iron fan, cherished by Pamela.
Thank you for being a fan.
Welcome to San Mateo County's Fix-It Clinic, a community repair event where neighbors help neighbors fix their broken electronics, appliances, and, well, all kinds of stuff.
We see everything. It's kind of like improv. You never know what the general public's going to bring you. I would say most stuff, it's anything you see on Best Buy or Amazon.
Let's do the important inspection, which is how easy is it going to be to take this apart?
The Fix-It Clinic is organized by San Mateo County's Office of Sustainability.
Here in the States, the concept is like, if something breaks, just get rid of it. And how can we shift that paradigm? And think about repairing it.
It's about keeping stuff that's already in service in our communities working so that people don't have to go buy new things.
It's run by Peter Mui and his intrepid army of volunteers equipped with just the right gear.
Have you ever seen a screwdriver that looks like that? No. You have to come to the Fix-It Clinic, and we've got this beautiful screwdriver here that's designed just for the Breville toaster.
We all have a variety of knowledge and background, and if I'm working on something I don't know, I'll go and grab somebody else and say, hey, I'm trying to fix this Mixmaster. Have you ever done this before? And we'll do it together.
The goal of the clinic is to keep useful stuff out of landfills.
Because the earth needs us to. Because we keep messing up.
Studies show how the manufacture and disposal of electronic devices can create greenhouse gas emissions. One strategy, extend their lifetimes, in fact, for all devices.
We didn't know back then what we know now, which is that, everything we throw away like this pretty much stays around and hurts our planet.
Diane Haditsian loves her blenders. They belong to her mother and her grandmother.
I came here today to see if we could fix it.
While there's no guarantee your stuff will be fixed, if it is, the whole room knows about it.
Waffle maker fixed!
As for Diane, the culprit was a sticky sludge gumming up the gears. After a cleaning, she's back in business.
It means that I don't have to throw this in landfill.
Sunbeam mixer
1955.
At the end of the day, fixing the small stuff,
I'm a huge fan.
might help us on our path to fix the world.
But it's not just electronics and appliances. Each year, more than 11 million tons of textiles, mostly clothing, also end up in our landfills. Now, a Bay Area woman is creating a beautiful solution, one stitch at a time.
Tucked away in a San Jose storefront, clothing designer Jocelyn West is hard at work on her new collection.
I'm getting ready for spring, and these are linen dusters made from old hand embroidered tablecloths.
Old vintage tablecloths, once destined for landfill or practically given away at flea markets.
I would find things and just be amazed at, what I was looking at and how undervalued they were.
In her hands, Jocelyn transforms unwanted linens.
This was a Pendleton blanket.
Virgin wool blankets and cashmere scraps into one-of-a-kind masterpieces.
I think this one's beautiful.
Amazing, special.
Really beautiful design.
Jocelyn is practicing the art of what's called upcycling.
Saving things that would otherwise be discarded or no longer needed or used, such as tablecloths, and giving them new life and new purpose and finding the beauty in them. This is all handmade filet lace and linen.
Her unique handmade garments stand in stark contrast to the trend of fast fashion. That's the mass production of cheap, stylish clothes now flooding the market. Research shows consumers are likely to discard fast fashion only after a few wears. Most of it ends up in landfill. As the clothing decomposes, it releases methane, a greenhouse gas that's 28 times as potent as carbon dioxide.
For something you're going to wear 3 or 4 times, it's not worth it. It's not worth what you're doing to the planet.
Back at the storefront, among Jocelyn's most popular garments, these warm, lightweight sweaters for toddlers, made out of cashmere scraps. They often sell out first.
They're really pretty and people like them and they're very durable.
Her brand of upcycling is a style that speaks for itself.
Being able to use old tablecloths or jackets or blankets and then giving it a new life. And it just makes it feel so much more special.
I love the idea of upcycling, recycling, right? And fashion together.
I try to upcycle whatever I can instead of throwing away. So I really appreciate when we do have more creative people doing that.
I think I'm doing the planet a favor in my own little way.
1 in 5 Americans now upcycles. It's a fashion-forward solution that hopefully never goes out of style.
Up next, they're one of the most captivating creatures in the wild, but they could go extinct. A look at what's being done to outfox the threat.
And later, they are carbon suckers, how these 40-foot towers may help turn back the clock on climate change. We'll show you the new technology that's the first of its kind in the nation.
Bay Area scientists may have help for an animal species in trouble by climate change.
That's right. We take a closer look at the threat to the Arctic fox and what's being done to keep them alive.
The Arctic fox. Their playful nature and distinctive look make them one of the most captivating creatures in the wild. But Arctic foxes are in trouble. Experts say they need to hunt rodents to survive long winters, and climate change is making their prey rare and harder to find.
If we get warmer and more unstable climate where you get snow melt and you get icing on the ground, that is going to affect how well the rodents can survive.
Thousands of miles away in the Bay Area, Stanford professor of biology Elizabeth Hadley. She cautions the Arctic fox is not the only species under threat.
Absolutely not. The Arctic fox is not the only species threatened by climate change and human activities.
Hadley studies the loss of biodiversity in a human-dominated world. She explains how human activity and climate change are challenging the survival of many species around the world.
Extinction happens in a heartbeat, and evolution takes a very long time. So it's easier to kind of kill something than it is to allow it to persist. So biodiversity is threatened in many ways by humanity, and the Arctic foxes exemplify those threats.
Back in the Arctic, Norwegian scientists have set up more than 30 feeding stations across the wilderness. They believe without this food, the Arctic fox would go extinct.
If we stop the feeding now, we would see a decrease in the population sizes, and that would be really detrimental.
The International Union for the Conservation of Nature reported how over 44,000 species are now threatened with extinction. Dr. Hadley believes we have a moral responsibility to consider what we could do to stem the loss.
It requires major activities on the part of humanity, not just a single person. We can all do our share, but it requires major action for us to consider what we can do to stem global change,
including reducing greenhouse gases and preserving wildlife habitats so we can outfox the threat.
Still ahead, pollution that we put into the air sucked out of the sky. How these towers could be the future when it comes to fighting climate change.
Plus, researchers are restoring a massive bed of oysters off the California coast, but they're not for eating.
And a lesson on trash talk, how a small army of kids who care about the environment are teaching others to do their part.
From CBS News Bay Area, this is Earth Day.
Welcome back. I'm Elizabeth Cook.
And I'm Ryan Yamamoto. A Bay Area company has developed a new way to reduce planet-warming CO2 emissions in our atmosphere. It's a process known as carbon capture, which traps and stores the harmful byproducts of burning fossil fuels.
Senior CBS national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy traveled to the Central Valley to show us how it works.
So this place is basically pulling in pollution that we've put up into the sky.
Exactly.
What's happening here may not look like much.
It is a bunch of rocks sitting on trays.
But Shashank Samala says it has the power to rewrite history.
You know, what carbon removal offers us is the closest thing to a time machine.
He's the CEO of Heirloom Carbon, which just opened the nation's first commercial carbon capture plant in Central California. Trays of limestone tower 40 feet high, sucking in carbon dioxide from the air like a sponge. In nature, that process takes months.
What we figured out is how to do that in about 3 days. So when CO2 molecules pass by, we're just gobbling up that CO2 molecule.
The CO2 is separated out and will be injected into rock formations underground, like at this facility, so it can no longer warm the planet. Over time, humans have pumped about 2 trillion tons of CO2 into the air. Scientists say we need to remove 5 to 10 billion tons per year by 2050 to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Heirloom says its pilot plant removes about 1,000 tons per year.
So you acknowledge that this is very small compared to the scale of the problem.
100%. We need to build plants that are 1,000 times larger than this, and we need to build 1,000 of those.
As we transition to cleaner forms of energy, carbon capture is a way to offset emissions from airplanes, cargo ships, and industries like cement and steel, which for now still require fossil fuels. But critics worry carbon capture is being co-opted by oil and gas companies.
As a carbon management leader, we can get it done.
90% of the carbon capture and storage projects out there on the market are run by the fossil fuel industry.
May Bouvier is executive director of 350.org, which opposes fossil fuel use. That industry is capturing carbon at some power plants to lower emissions. Critics say that's prolonging the use of fossil fuels. Some oil companies also inject captured carbon back into the ground to push out more oil in a process called enhanced oil recovery.
They've looked for excuse after excuse about how to stay in this business and how to keep the music playing.
Shashank Samala won't rule out taking fossil fuel money, but he believes carbon capture is an essential part of the solution to the climate crisis.
Unfortunately, it's not an either-or. It's not a nice-to-have anymore. This is a must-have.
A spokesperson for Heirloom Carbon says the company is not affiliated with the fossil fuel industry and says their focus is on cleaning up the damage we have already done to the environment.
Well, deforestation is accelerating climate change all around the world, which motivated a school in Berkeley to try to do what they could in their own backyard. Ann Makovic shows us how these tiny forests could make a difference.
On a busy street corner in Berkeley,
What's it?
a tiny revolution is taking root.
It's a really special type of forest. It smells really good. I saw a few bees.
Instead of pavement or a manicured lawn,
See the dots?
there's a dense little pocket of native plants and saplings flourishing in rich soil in front of the Berkeley Technology Academy. It's called a Miyawaki, or microforest.
They grow much faster and they use less water, which is very, very good.
Tracking its growth, some fifth graders from a nearby school. Less than a year ago, they actually helped plant it.
15 inches, yeah.
Overseeing the project, their science teacher, Neelam Patil.
Well, the reason we're planting the Miyawaki forests and using the Miyawaki method is to address climate change.
For years, Neelam has taught her students about the dangers of climate change, and now she's showing them what they can do about it by planting these tiny, incredibly fast-growing forests.
What color are these?
The Miyawaki method first intensely restores the soil and then tightly plants together only native flora. Research shows these tiny forests grow 10 times faster and sequester more carbon. They reduce the urban heat island effect and filter the air. They also quickly become a cradle for renewed biodiversity, which is currently under threat as the planet continues to warm.
We're basically facing 40% biodiversity loss by the end of the decade. We need solutions, and the Miyawaki forest is a very effective and efficient solution.
So far, students and volunteers have planted Miyawaki forests at 4 Berkeley schools. Now there's a chance they can grow more.
The city owns a lot more land in Berkeley than the schools.
Berkeley City Council member Sophie Hahn has recommended funding a new pilot program. It would plant 2 new Miyawaki forests, this time on city sites, especially near freeways where there's poor air quality and fewer trees.
This is an issue that is urgent for everyone, and it is particularly urgent for our lower income and communities of color. All of this is tied into climate and to equity in very powerful ways. We need to do everything we can.
These children feel inspired.
When I look at it, I feel very proud and I am very happy that I'm helping the world.
That one seems like it might be.
And cultivating hope for the future.
Believe it or not, an oyster can do so much more than turn a tiny grain of sand into a pearl. Experts say one tiny shellfish, a California native, may play a big role in curbing the impacts of climate change.
At Swan Oyster Depot in San Francisco, the line forms early. If you're lucky to get a seat, you're in for a treat.
We just had the Olympia oysters, which were phenomenal.
The Olympia oyster, small as a silver dollar, but big in flavor. They're the only oyster native to the West Coast.
Good. I grew up eating this oyster, and I think they're just fantastic.
Olympias are not endangered, but their abundant numbers have dramatically declined, largely due to overharvesting during the gold rush, as well as pollution and loss of habitat. Now, scientists, researchers, and volunteers are working to restore the Olympias in the wild, where they once historically thrived.
We are here to bring back oysters to Elkhorn Slough.
We're at an estuary.
Dr. Kirsten Walson is leading the pioneering effort at this estuary at the heart of Monterey Bay.
We are just doing it with optimism and hoping that if we can bring back 1 million oysters to Elkhorn Slough, they'll be self-sustaining, and today is one step towards that goal.
In the slough, the restored oysters won't be harvested. Their intended role? To filter water, stabilize the shoreline, and provide habitat for other creatures. All big benefits as the planet warms.
So it's really important that we help to restore this population.
First stop, the hatchery at Moss Landing Marine Laboratories.
We have baby individual oysters.
Here, wild Olympias are borrowed from the slough to breed babies that will go back to the slough.
In a hatchery, we can control a lot of the environment, and we can make sure that those little babies make it through to being juveniles.
The baby oysters require tender, loving care, microalgae for food, the right temperatures, and plenty of fresh water.
They're very needy and very dirty, so they are really fun to take care of, but they need a lot of attention.
When ready, they'll attach to hard surfaces, including these large clamshells
that we actually collect in the slough.
The team carefully gathers the oyster-encrusted shells, puts them in special mesh bags, and packs them in a cooler. Next stop, the slough, where the scientists and volunteers are ready to jump into action.
Elkhorn Slough needs a lot of help.
I believe that natural habitats should be maintained.
The work is unusual.
Yeah, we're taking count of how many baby oysters are alive on these clamshells.
They record the data and then secure each clamshell to a PVC pipe. Once all the oysters are counted, secured, and tagged, about 80,000 babies, the rubber-booted volunteers caravan down to the estuary.
Please just check the zip ties that they're actually locked.
Here, they form a brigade and carefully pass the pipes down to the scientists, who plant them into the muddy goop and low tidal waters of Hester Marsh.
On my watch, I don't want to see the oyster disappear from Elkhorn Slough.
I ate it already. I couldn't wait. Delicious.
Back at Swans, patrons think the effort is well worth it.
It's a win-win for everybody. If what they're trying to establish down in the slough works, it'll be incredible.
An Olympic quest for future generations.
Yay! Well, many of us get food delivered, but what do you do with all those empty chip bags or pizza boxes? Sarah Donchie spoke to a top team for advice.
It's lunchtime at Glenwood Elementary in San Rafael. Tucked into the lunch bags and boxes,
cheese and tortilla roll, chicken noodle soup, half Asian burrito. It's a cucumber and radish salad, some pistachio nuts.
But before students head back to class, a trip to the recycling bins. These kids know what goes where. That's thanks, in part, to the school's Green Team.
The Green Team is a group of really dedicated kids who care about the environment, and they're trying to help our whole school learn how to sort their waste.
And there's a lot of waste, about 2 billion tons generated each year around the world. Not only that, but 40% of all the food we bring home ends up in a landfill. And that landfill mix is helping to fuel climate change by creating a potent greenhouse gas.
It creates methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas that can lead to pollution to our environment.
15% of greenhouse gases come from landfill. If organic waste like food or soiled paper is not composted, it rots and produces methane. And that's contributing to more extreme weather events,
like droughts and wildfires.
Surveys show more than 55% of Americans are confused by recycling. That includes seasoned news veterans. Found inside the KPIX bins, soiled paper towels and cups thrown into landfill, a fruit salad sealed in a Ziploc dumped into compost, and an unemptied cup of soup tossed into recycling. So we asked the Green Team for help.
Organic food in the compost, soft plastic in the trash.
What does not go into recycling?
Food waste, candy wrappers, chip bags.
What does not go into compost?
Plastic bags and wrappers and like straws and those things.
And finally, what does not go into landfill?
Banana peels or soiled papers or even plants.
But what about this? At KPIX in the landfill bin, a sealed plastic bag containing an aluminum can, sardines, used paper towels, a soiled paper plate, and a plastic fork.
It's gross. I think that that is definitely not the best choice to do. This is the type of thing where people are just too lazy to do it.
Bottom line, the Green Team insists sorting is simple. It's just not that hard.
Just always follow the stickers or like the instructions when it comes to trash.
And that's the best kind of trash talking.
Still ahead, saving California's salmon, the new effort to bring them home, and how the answer could lie half a world away.
Plus, it's one of the main greenhouse gases warming our planet, and it doesn't just come from cows. A Bay Area startup is turning the gas into something useful. Well, more than 100 years ago, Chinook salmon from the McLeod River near the Shasta Dam ended up in the cold mountain waters of New Zealand, where today they continue to thrive. Ann Makovic has an update on the quest to bring these ancestors of the California fish back home, thanks to a new grant.
It is a 300-mile journey that traces the ancestral path of the winter run Chinook salmon from the McCloud River to the Pacific Ocean. The annual pilgrimage is led by the Winnemem Wintu tribe and its chief, Colleen Sisk. The tribe has never wavered from a core belief.
Whatever happens to the salmon happens to the people.
Salmon populations are a fraction of what they once were, and climate change plays a role.
In the last decade, they've been hit by the 1-2 punch of climate change. Disruptive heat waves, dryness through extreme drought.
Chuck Bonham heads up the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. He says the summer of 2021 was a grim one for the salmon.
We were in the midst of the peak of our most recent severe drought. And these fish are now trapped down on the valley floors. And the valley floors are much hotter. Water that's too hot is lethal for salmon.
California's Fish and Wildlife just awarded $50 million in grants for 15 projects. One involves the Winnemem Wintu and the tribe's attempts to restore wild salmon to the McCloud River.
This is the right thing to do, and it'll help us figure out how to save salmon in California.
And so they're in a dire position now and may go extinct if this project that we're involved with isn't successful.
Sisk recounts how the problem first began with the Shasta Dam. While the dam provides flood control, hydroelectric power, and water supplies,
it is a weapon of mass destruction to me.
Built during World War II, Shasta Dam flooded the Winnemem tribe off their ancestral land. It also blocked the Chinook from returning to the icy cold McCloud River to spawn. In 1994, these fish were federally listed as endangered. The tribe held protests. Then Chief Sisk got an email.
Do you want your salmon back? We have them.
That email was from the head of the Maori people of New Zealand. It turns out, in the 19th century, millions of salmon eggs from the McCloud River were exported to 30 states and 14 different countries to create new salmon runs. The only one that thrived is the one in New Zealand. Sisk and other tribal members traveled to see the fish and became determined to bring some back home to the McCloud.
You know, we want to welcome them home.
What better way to try to heal past injuries and show the world it's possible to do things together and make it better?
In an historic agreement, the tribe is now working with Fish and Wildlife and NOAA Fisheries to support a joint effort to return the salmon to the McCloud. Sisk believes the wild salmon eggs will fare better than those hatched near the dam.
If the salmon survive, people will survive. If we can get a volitional passage from the Sacramento River past the dam so that fish can swim in and out on their own, then we have wild fish again.
The hope? To get them home safely as soon as possible.
It's not just the excess carbon dioxide that's overheating the planet. A second gas that's actually more potent than CO2, methane, is also a major cause of climate change. Our Sarah Donchi looks at a Bay Area startup with a clever strategy to pull methane out of the air and in the process, turn it into a rich fertilizer.
Each year, every cow on the planet will belch a lot of methane. But they're not the only culprits.
Part of the challenge with methane is it does come from everywhere.
Josh Silverman is CEO of Windfall Bio, a startup located in Menlo Park. He explains methane emissions also come from coal, oil, and gas production, wastewater treatment plants, and landfills.
So any place that you have organic material that is breaking down, degrading, rotting, it produces methane as a byproduct.
Methane is a big problem. It's actually more potent than carbon dioxide.
Methane not only warms the atmosphere more, but it also warms it much faster.
This vial may hold the key. The liquid contains methane-eating microbes, usually found in soil. They pull methane out of the air. By eating it, the microbes then transform a climate-harming gas into a beneficial product. In this case, an organic fertilizer.
The microbes are at the heart of what we do.
Carla Risso is the director of microbiology. She says these soil microbes have dramatically declined around the world. Here at Windfall Bio, they're being nurtured, nourished, and cultivated.
Basically, we know what they like, and we give it to them. So they will multiply and make tons more.
This concept, this technology is really amazing.
I got really excited, immediately decided to enter this field.
Bioengineers Kaifeng Chen and Aram Balian are conducting experiments with the microbes to optimize their diet and cultivation.
The fact that nature just produces this, it's out there, and we're seeing that they're diminishing. I want to make it my job to try to restore that population in the soils.
We do see methane consumption, and our microbes are growing. The other side of this product is they also enhance their biomass. In the future, we could apply that on the field as fertilizer.
The idea is to provide the microbes where the methane is created on farms, cattle ranches, landfills, water treatment plants, and the fossil fuel industry. The microbes will be freeze-dried and then resuscitated with liquid nutrients before being applied to the land.
Then they should come back alive, and then that's how they can do their jobs.
Judy Sue is director of biology.
The application can reduce the methane, how it can help our planet, our soil health, our environment.
Methane is a very big deal.
Former U.S. Secretary of Energy and Stanford professor Dr. Stephen Chu is now advising the scientists at Windfall Bio. He believes their strategy makes a lot of sense.
Why not capture it before it gets diluted, capture it, prevent its release, turn it into an energy source, which seemed to be a really good approach.
As for the scientists, they too want to make a difference.
We need to focus on technology solutions that work.
I choose to believe there is hope.
Being in this job, it gives me optimism every day because I see how many exciting technologies, how many exciting companies are coming up just like our own, and really trying to make it their mission to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the future and have this world be livable for our kids.
In this case, all thanks to some mighty microbes.
Coming up, helping save the planet one song at a time.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known.
How Bay Area musicians are using special concerts to push for change.
If we don't take care of our home, the planet, and get really concerned about the things that are happening here, then it's going to be a miserable place to live.
One of the most legendary bands to come out of the Bay Area put on quite the show in the heart of San Francisco.
And as our Sarah Donchi shows us, they're not just out here to rock it out, they're also here to help stop climate change.
Outside the historic Fillmore, San Francisco! Inside Green Day, the Grammy winners who can sell out stadiums just performed at the more intimate venue.
Welcome to my problem.
The East Bay group played 2 entire albums, the newly released Saviors, as well as the masterpiece American Idiot. The event was hosted by the United Nations and Recording Academy, but it was organized by the Right Here, Right Now Global Climate Alliance.
Music is a really unique tool in our toolbox.
David Clark founded the alliance. He says the Fillmore event was the global kickoff to a new concert venture. The proceeds will fund climate change initiatives.
Green Day, they've been promoting, social and environmental issues for decades. So they were really our first choice, and we're grateful they agreed to perform, and it was amazing.
One goal, to reframe climate change as a human rights crisis. Those in immediate danger are already among the most vulnerable.
It's such an existential threat. It's actually hard for people to wrap their heads around it, which is why you need to communicate in languages that they understand, like art and music.
If we don't take care of each other, it's going to be pretty dismal.
Grammy winner Xavier Duprepolis, Oakland's own Fantastic Negrito, applauds the alliance and its efforts.
If we don't take care of our home, the planet, and get really concerned about the things that are happening here, then it's going to be a miserable place to live.
Can you hear the sound? It's born into the ground.
His song Rolling Through California was sparked by the state's devastating 2021 wildfire season, stoked by climate change. He too sees music as an instrument of change.
You want to try to motivate people to do something, to take action, because doing nothing is just not an option.
Xavier's Storefront Records is co-hosting an Earth Day celebration on April 21st at Thrive City near Chase Center. He says vulnerable communities are also in our own backyard.
Other neighborhoods that I came from sometimes even are overlooked, or the conversation isn't even being had about climate change and environment.
On Earth Day, there will be open-air markets that will benefit local vendors to keep us all thriving.
Get in harmony with the earth, the place that you live. The more you love it, the more it gives. Earth Day!
A gift where we can all find harmony.
Thank you for joining us on this Earth Day. We will continue to bring you stories on how Bay Area researchers and communities are leading the way to protect our planet.
Yeah, our ongoing series is called Project Earth: The Path Forward. You can find those stories on kpix.com. Thanks for watching.